Hello there, Buzzkillers. Quote or No Quote is sponsored by HelloFresh. HelloFresh solves the age-old problem, what's for dinner? And they solve it for all types of people. Many of you Buzzkillers have young families. You're rushed and harried at the end of the day, and you make something quick and thoughtless for dinner. Your Buzzlings won't eat it, and you'll get frustrated. HelloFresh solves all that. They send you great meals made of healthy, locally sourced ingredients. Your Buzzlings will love them, and you'll be super parents. Go to hellofresh.ca and use the code BUZZKILL50, that's BUZZKILL50, to get 50% off your first box. Do it now, Buzzkillers, and say hello to a fresh new life. And now, on to the show.
We shall never surrender.
One small step for man.
I have a dream. Ask not what your country can do for you.
What's the status quo of your favorite quote? Professor Buzzkill explains all on Quote or No Quote.
Yes, it's your favorite professor here. Buzzkillers by the score have asked us here at the Institute for shows on the Vietnam War, and we're working on them, and we'll get them out relatively soon. But the Ken Burns film on PBS, The Vietnam War, the 18-part, 10-hour interview-thon that's going on now, is provoking lots of you to ask questions about the war and about the protests against it. So today we're going to look at one of the most famous quotes from the Vietnam era. When asked about being drafted for the Vietnam War, Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers in history and also one of the most controversial, is often quoted as saying, quote, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," unquote. And this, as the famous story goes, was immediately followed by the now more famous quote, "No Viet Cong ever called me nigger," unquote, in a sort of 1-2 punch of defiance. Ali's quote summarized in one glaring sentence the idea that oppression against African Americans started at home in the United States, and that, as he saw it, African Americans were being drafted to fight the wrong fight against the wrong people. It's one of the most famous sayings from the Vietnam War protest period. But did Ali actually say that phrase? Or more to the point, did Ali coin it? No, he didn't coin it. And the evidence is that he certainly didn't say it in reaction to his draft notification, as is often written. And we know this because Buzzkill Institute scholars have been able to rely on the work of those famous quote investigators, Ralph Keyes and Fred Shapiro, and especially on the excellent journalistic digging of Stefan Fatsis of Slate magazine. But I want to talk about it because the history of this quote or saying or slogan really provides us with an opportunity to see how these kinds of ideas and kinds of quotes emerge in the culture generally and then get attached to the famous and most quotable people who are around at the time or who are involved in the same movement or experience. So here's what happened. On February 17th, 1966, while training for a fight against Ernie Terrell, Ali received word that his draft status had been changed from 1Y, that's at the bottom of the list, not fit for military draft, to 1A, that's at the top of the list. And Robert Lipside of the New York Times reported that Ali's first reaction was to ask why the local draft board had changed his draft status so drastically. Ali complained that he was being singled out, and that, according to him, he did more for the military in the Vietnam War by paying enormous taxes on his prizefight winnings than he ever would as a run-of-the-mill grunt soldier. And the reporters around him on that day, though, kept asking questions about it. And one of them eventually got around to asking him something about the North Vietnamese and the members of its military, the Viet Cong. Ali shrugged and replied, quote, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," end quote. And that phrase flew rapidly around the media at the time, with pro-war people speaking out against Ali and anti-war protesters taking him as one of their own. But there's no evidence that Ali followed that reaction, the "I ain't got no quarrel" reaction, with the "No Viet Cong ever called me nigger" quotation. That was added a few years later because, like so many anonymous quotes, it has more power when attached to an individual, particularly one with a strong and forceful personality like Ali. No Viet Cong ever called me nigger was already being used by black anti-war protesters in early 1966 and may have been used in 1965. On February 23rd, within a week of Ali's no quarrel comment, and at the risk of repeating myself over and over, that comment was not followed by the N-word comment. No Viet Cong ever called me nigger was spotted on a poster at an anti-war demonstration in New York. The phrase appeared repeatedly at various protests during that year, and it's unknown who thought of it first, and believe me, lots of people have looked into it. Although, Stokely Carmichael is sometimes credited, John Lewis is sometimes credited, possible originators, but there's no evidence it was Ali. He did say something very close to it in 1967 when he told an interviewer, "They never called me nigger," and we have a good sound clip from that interview. Here it is.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor, hungry people in the mud for big, powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger. They never lynched me. They never put no dogs on me. They never robbed me of my nationality, raped and killed my mother and father. What, I'm going to shoot them for what? How am I going to shoot them? Them little poor little black people, little babies and children and women. How can I shoot them poor people? I would just take me to jail.
And he said something very similar when he talked to the journal Black Scholar in 1970. But the "No Viet Cong ever called me nigger" quote became so quickly attached to Ali in the late 60s and early 70s that he used it in a 1977 film, The Greatest, which was about himself, in which he played himself. And of course, by 1977, Ali may have thought that the phrase was his, and it's certainly a fact that the wider culture was already attributing it to him by then. This is how so many famous quote citations are established. Once you're called the greatest, almost everything drifts your way. Talk to you next week.